Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, it is Nick here, back with your daily crypto news and analysis. And today we're going to be talking about Hedera and HBAR. So with that being said, let's just dive in and let's start off with a few things. So first and foremost, I do want to dive in to some price action within the market. We're sitting at about roughly $1.2 trillion. We are still awaiting to see if Bitcoin is going to go for a little bit of a deeper wick down to about like roughly 27 to 28K. But for the most part, the market is still looking like it wants to have a big year still. Like I said, this year has already been extremely bullish for crypto, and I think that's only going to continue from here on out. As I really kind of look at Hedera and look at some of these other tokens, I really do think that utility is starting to wake up for the world, and I think that regulations are going to be the big accelerant for that. We're probably still a couple years away from actually having global regulatory standards in place, probably within the next 2 years. But I'm still heavily focused on a lot of these tokens like HBAR, for an example, especially as they do kind of just range sideways. I mean, for the whole year, we've kind of had this sideways notion in terms of price action where we're coming back down and we're retesting some nice levels, but for the most part the structure on HBAR still looks extremely bullish and it's had a nice setup, and I do think that it's starting to have a build up for a major breakout, and that breakout is going to start once we get above the 10-cent zone. For example, I've shared my thoughts on this a few times already on this channel. And the level at which I feel very confident accumulating HBAR is pretty much this range down here. So I've shared this even on the Patreon, but this level here is a very solid level for accumulating HBAR, because even if we go all the way back to 2020 and 2021, we know that this has been extremely profitable. This whole level between like 4 cents to roughly like 5.5 cents. So I would argue like this whole level here is very solid for loading up on HBAR, especially for the long-term road ahead. Even short-term, I do think that this is going to be a very profitable trade, simply because, you know, as we do look at the chart for HBAR right now, it is being squeezed between some EMAs on the 3-day right now. And as you guys do see, we're still kind of trading against resistance here, probably going to build up to it and kind of wait for that big break. But on this next move, we should get above 6 cents. 6 cents has been a big area of resistance for a little bit of time now. But usually once we do get a big break above it, we start to move pretty quickly, like we did all the way back in January. I believe that this is what we are going to see yet again. We have a nice setup, like I said, with having this low back here, which was our bottom, in my opinion, from December. And then we have this level here just recently in June. And I do think that now we're kind of building up a little bit. This is our low from July so far. I do think that we will hold this unless we break it. Make sure to watch for a break of this level at about roughly 4.5 cents. If we lose 4.5 cents, we will most likely get a retest of 4 cents, or possibly even retesting that low from December, which is about roughly 3.5 cents, which I think is a low chance of happening, because like I said, this thing is brewing for a big break, especially once we get over that 6 cent zone. Once we get over this, really it's just kind of targeting some of these upper ranges of resistance, which I don't think that will hold all that well, because it's kind of weaker resistance. I think that what we will mainly target is that 8 cent zone, and then that's where we will most likely see a slight pullback back down to flip resistance into support. So maybe even like the 7 cent zone, like 6.5 cent, 7 cent. And then from there, we will target the 10 cent zone, finally getting a breakout to the upper level of roughly 15 to almost 20 cents on HBAR. So, you know, like I said, short term, this thing has a great setup. Long term, we're targeting much higher prices, probably $1 plus, with a high probability of like $2 being the major target, with a possible outreach to $3 to $6, like my original targets on HBAR have always been. But with that, let's talk about a few things happening around Hedera and why the recent rolling around even Ripple with XRP is very significant for Hedera. So shout out to the HBAR bull. He recently had George Basak from Hedera on his YouTube channel. Go check out his YouTube channel. Also check him out over on Twitter as well. We do see we finally got a break on the crypto regulatory front. And this is his full interview and everything else impacting the Hedera ecosystem that you can find over on, like I said, the HBAR Bulls YouTube channel. But this 1 minute and 3 second long segment is really kind of talking about the implications of the XRP ruling regarding Hedera and HBAR as a token. Listen closely.
Now, this ruling, there's a lot in there. It's fairly short. It's only like 30 some odd pages, but there's so much to unpack. I've only had a chance to read it twice. So these are my first takes. There's subject to change and subject to, there's so much nuance here. But this ruling is huge. The court addresses three different types of distributions of XRP. There was one, the institutional sales. So the institutional sales were direct agreements between Ripple and institutional investors. Mind you, I have to go back to look at the record as to why these weren't done, how these were done, and they weren't pursuant to like a SAFT where a Form D would have been filed. Essentially, the SEC claimed, hey, these, even though those were accredited investors, these are still unregistered securities offerings, and the court agreed. That's the one negative. Now that that's out the way, we can talk about all the positive. Sorry if I'm speaking fast. I'm just excited, and I will say the industry should be excited.
So yeah, he does talk about the one negative thing around the XRP ruling, but for the most part, just like I said about the XRP ruling, it really does open the door for all of these other tokens to kind of have, something to base themselves off of, right? Like, as we look at what the XRP ruling did do, it allowed everyone to know that a lot of these tokens that are offered on these exchanges or secondary sales themselves, they really, it kind of gave us an insight on it, right? It gave us some transparency, some clarity, which is very exciting. We still have some time. Like I said, probably 2 years until we actually have a global regulatory structure. You could still question HBAR, but for the most part, I do think that this ruling was very significant. And again, it really kind of opens everyone's eyes to how important utility also is as well. As we really kind of look at the space, I do think that we're getting closer and closer every single day. And I even said it over on Twitter. I said utility is set to conquer this space. A big change is coming. Just like the dot-com bubble where you had $1 billion plus companies set up in a backyard shed, we have multi-billion-dollar meme coins. Regulations inch closer and closer day by day. A wipeout of the garbage is crucial and necessary for the next wave. What we will see is 99% of this market evaporate into thin air, with all that is left standing being utility tokens. I focus heavily on, and I've of course mentioned a ton of tokens and many other projects. The main reason I focus on most of these projects is because they are all set to be utilized heavily within certain markets/industries. Many of these networks are already experimenting with big players through proof of concepts, with Hedera recently being a big one with a proof of concept. It gets tiresome hearing trillions are coming every single day, but the truth is that they are. We might be 2 years away from proper regulations, but once we see the wipeout, the utility tokens get the green light. I have spoke on the idea regarding crypto becoming a $100 trillion asset class, and I strongly believe it will happen. Over the course of the next 10 years, this space will look entirely different. Welcome to the fourth industrial revolution. And yes, this is right on par with my thought process whenever I do talk about some of these tokens like Hedera. A lot of people think that, HBAR can't reach a $1 trillion market cap. Take a step back, right? Like, think about some of the stocks out there. Think about Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, or any of these other major companies. They have hit $1 trillion or even close to $1 trillion market caps already. And the craziest thing is that there's people out there buying their stock. When we look at some of this technology like Hedera, this is technology that is going to most likely power the future around a lot of these companies. These companies very well could be utilizing this technology in their infrastructure in the future. So if you think about that, these are companies that have hit $1 trillion market caps. Imagine what the underlying technology would be worth, right? That's why I look at HBAR and I'm like, well, this could very well be a $1 trillion market cap in the future. And I do believe that it will be. And a lot of people think that I'm, thinking about this and I'm just crazy to think about it like that. But when we look at how much money is out there and how much money will most likely flood into the space over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, I don't think that it's unimaginable that Hedera could hit a $1 trillion market cap. Now, also with that, right, I did talk a little bit about transactions. So as we look at transactions on Hedera, we recently seen about 6,000 plus TPS on the mainnet. And I said, for those wondering why HBAR isn't changing in price even with the demand, it's because of the cost per transaction. this should still get you very excited because this is just a starting point. Long term, we will see much higher demand of the network. And when that happens, we will finally see HBAR's value impacted by it. And yeah, this is very exciting. And you know what's funny? This happens a day after we seen the announcement from Hedera with the POC, with the Shinhan Bank with their stablecoin remittances. Now, I don't think that it really has a tie back to this, but it's also very interesting on the alignment with the transactional demand exploding like this on Hedera. But one thing that I will note is that Hedera has been doing very well in terms of transactions. For an example, in year to date, we've already seen about roughly 12 billion transactions with 10,000 plus TPS already on the network. So in the last 7 months, almost 8 months, we've seen 12 billion transactions being pushed through the mainnet. And this is just a starting point. Like, you know, I even said about XRP, like a lot of people were talking about XRP a little bit and, you know, the price action on XRP. I'm like, this is just the beginning. All of this is just the beginning. This whole market is still just the beginning. It's in the beginning phases of what's to come. And, you know, again, as we look at the market today, there's about 26,300 projects. A lot of that's going to get wiped out. And what will be left is these networks out here that are transacting. You know, if you want to think short term, that's totally fine. Like I said, I outlined short term price action on HBAR. I do think that we will see, you know, this 15 to 20 cent zone. If you want to load up for just like the 15 to 20 cent zone for a short term trade, that's totally fine. That's up to you. But I'm thinking much longer term. Like I do think that some of these tokens, these networks are, you know, set to hit $1 trillion plus in market cap eventually. And it's because of all the use case potential tied to them. You got to remember that Hedera has been expanding forever. For the last 2 years that I've been talking about Hedera and HBAR as a token, we have seen the network expand rapidly through, you know, financial use cases and, you know, you name it. And it's always like another announcement after another announcement from Hedera, and it's usually always centered out on some type of big use case within some type of large industry, like for an example, finance. So that gets me very excited. And remember, like this has been a network and a team that's been always focused on the goal of creating utility backed by a network that can ultimately handle anything that gets thrown its way. So, you know, to me personally, yeah, I think that this is a $100 trillion asset class. I think that utility is going to conquer this space over the course of the next couple of years. And I really do think that we will see a massive acceleration, if you will, of these utility tokens being utilized as back end infrastructure. And once we do see that, it's game over. So do I think that, you know, we have to wait 2 years for any major gains? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like I said, you know, I'm really kind of looking at you know, some nice low targets initially. Like if we're really kind of looking at HBAR today, really just kind of look at the all-time high of about 58 cents. You know, from there we could argue probably seeing anywhere between $1 to $2 conservatively, and then possibly $3 to $6 if we start to see a massive breakout on Hedera. But we have to also take into accountability the supply is a lot different today than it was back when we were initially talking about a possible $3 to $6 range, because again, they are ahead of schedule on a lot of the tokens being released. I think that we're close to 33 billion. So I could still see about like roughly a $3 HBAR being possible. That's right around like 90 to almost $100 billion market cap. It's not as easy, you know, from when we had 10 billion supply, because that would have been like a $30 billion market cap. But I still think it's something that's possible. But like I said, stack as if it's only going to the all-time high, stack as if it's only going to $1. That way, when it does blow past those targets and, you know, hits possibly $3 to $6, I don't think that we're going to see $6 in the next run up, but I do think that anywhere between, you know, $1 to $3, and I know that's a pretty broad area to look at. I mean, here's $1, here's $3 up here. I would say, you know, the $3 to like $1.50 zone is something that's pretty safe. And again, you know, I really do think that the future is extremely bright for Hedera and HBAR as a token, especially with the recent expansion. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on if you guys want more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. So up to you all. Have a beautiful day or beautiful night wherever you guys are on this build. This has been Nick. Peace out, guys.